Welcome to Equilibrium Echoes, the podcast where we delve into the transformative power of your inner world on your relationships. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker. Join me as we unlock the secrets of emotional equilibrium and dig deep into the tools and insights needed to foster healthier, more fulfilling relationships in ways that feel safe and authentic. Welcome back to Equilibrium Echoes. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker, and here we are. This is the last episode of season 3. I cannot believe it. It has been quite a wild ride. And for all of you who have been with me for a while now, thank you so much for joining me for this amazing journey in Equilibrium Echoes. Today, we are closing out the season with Kristin Quattlebaum. She is a master intuitive and a rewilder. She told me that a minute ago. That's what she calls herself. We're going to have to find out what that means here in just a minute. Her business is called KQ Unplugged. Kristin, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Alyssa.
I'm really excited for this conversation. We're going to talk about authentic expression and not being afraid of who you really are, showing up as yourself. And I think this is going to be a really fascinating conversation and also a great one to close the season out, because what do we all, like everyone who's here listening to this podcast is really on this journey to get closer to their authentic self, to show up as their healed self, to stop hiding, to stop silencing themselves, like all of these things that we do that are often trauma responses or just responses to life being really tough sometimes. So Kristin, I'd like you to start us out by telling us just a little bit of your story and kind of how you got where you are, and also tell us what you do as a master intuitive and a rewilder.
Right. Well, I usually start with the fact that I was in corporate for 15 years. So when I got out of college, I jumped into my career and thought that I can't be happy with anything until I have my career settled. And along that journey, I found that I was always looking for where I belonged, but never quite finding it. I would find new and interesting pathways to explore and get really excited and dive deep into them and get really good at these things and think, this is it, this is my path. And then a couple years in, every time I would feel like I hit a wall and that this isn't for me. This isn't it. And I was so confused by the fact that everyone around me seem to be finding that, right? They seem to know, like, this is the exact path. I want to be a chiropractor. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer, whatever that was. And I was just sort of fumbling along the way, trying to find where I belonged. So much so that I thought something was wrong with me until I came across this TED Talk called Why Some of Us Don't Have Just One True Calling by Emily Wapnick. And that was very enlightening for me and actually made me feel like I'm not alone in this journey. And so through my tenacity of continuing to explore who am I, I really just started unraveling that. Coming to a pinnacle, I got into an accident, hitting a deer with my car going pretty fast. My boyfriend hit the deer, and it triggered a lot of debilitating anxiety in me, anxiety that I had not felt before. And this was around my Saturn return, so around 30 years old. And so that's what really started my journey inward and starting to unravel my emotions. And the more I unraveled my emotions and started finding my true expression, that's what really led me more on my journey. Fast forward that, I was working with a therapist for a while to navigate anxiety, and then started working with a coach and to heal food and body image, actually, at the time. And started meditating. Meditation opened up my intuitive gifts, and that was back in 2017. And it's just been expanding ever since then. And so now my work is really about nonconformity, expression, purpose, just really the courage to be who the fuck you are in the world. And so the rewilding aspect is really, to me, it's about coming back to ourselves, right? Coming back to this wild and raw expression within ourselves, right? We talk about this authentic authenticity, and I'd love to even unravel that a little bit with you, because I think our versions of that can be different and what that looks like in the world. But yeah, to me, rewilding it's all about lifing and being this raw version of yourself that, is unafraid to go against the pack.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we are often very afraid of that. And it's really interesting because when I hear people say, "Oh, I'm not afraid of that. I just do my own thing." What I often find is that's not really true. They just have a different pack that they are trying to fit in with, and it may not be the most standard, typical way. Like that may not look in the same as it looks for everyone else, but very often it just means that there's a different sort of fitting in that they're trying to do. So, so tell me more about this authentic self and authentic expression. Like, how do you see that? How do you define that?
For me, the first part was really unraveling what's not mine. So it was more about this releasing process of, is this my belief? Is this what I want to do in life? How do I feel about this? Am I actually happy and fulfilled? So it was more about unraveling all of that. Who are all the people and missions and ideals that I'm serving that aren't mine, right? Where am I tapped into society, to these other packs, as you say, even corporate, right? What is this ladder that I'm climbing or desiring to climb? And do I even want to be there? So it was a lot of that at first, really the detaching from all the things that aren't mine and understanding and revealing what's coming up through me. And the other part of it was really in this releasing of my emotion that I had buried for so many years, right? And so it's funny because right now I happen to be in this space of this deeper feminine, like sacred rage is coming through me right now that I haven't explored yet, even though I've done so much emotional work. This deeper level of tapping into my feminine is now coming through. And so what's interesting is that along these journeys of coming out in our expression, I find that it's not pretty all the time.
Yeah.
It's not as pretty as we would like it to be. Even if we've done a lot of work, right? Like right now, this rage that's coming up through me that I'm trying to understand and navigate is really interesting to witness, as I've, having done so much emotional work already, but it doesn't always look pretty. So I think that part of it in the rewilding and the expression and the unapologetic authenticity is in this releasing of what's no longer resonant, what wants to be freed from our bodies. And sometimes that is a bit wild. So, and very raw, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, why do you think most people kind of stumble into their 30s, 40s, 50s and really have no idea who they are? Like what? I mean, I think there's some obvious factors there, but what are some of the things that you see that maybe aren't quite so obvious about why? Because, I have small children and I look at my 4-year-old and like, she's just so unapologetically her. Like she doesn't take any time to think about what someone else is going to think before she does something or says something. And most of us, by the time we've gotten to our 30s and 40s, we have completely lost that. So what are some things that you see happening that kind of stifle that authenticity and that expression in us?
One of the biggest things I can say, especially doing intuitive work now, is this detachment from our soul, from our true essence. This, sort of numbing or masking that we've done throughout our lives to fit in, to walk the path that we think that the pack is walking, that we think this is what I should be doing. Right. And it sort of leads to this detachment of who we truly are. And I think that sometimes especially when we're younger, if we're really emotional as children, sometimes that can be shamed or, told that we need to temper down. And so even things like autism and hypersensitivity, things like this that are coming out in a lot of kids now, I think we tend as humans not to understand that and want to put labels on these things and say there's something else going on here. This isn't true. This isn't your true essence, right? And so we live in a world where the mind, the ego is trying to understand and define everything. And when we don't find acceptance in that, we don't see that actually this is what's true for me, it leads to this detachment of who we are. And that to me is really the essence of it. It's that detachment of the expansive, limitless beingness that lives within us, and this, I'm all in my head and I'm going to do what I think I should be doing instead of listening to what my body is actually resonating with.
Yeah, I think that's so true. So, before we talk a little bit about how to get back to this authentic expression, let's talk for a minute about why this is so important. And, because there's probably some people listening who are like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, people around me are happy. I'm okay. I think some of that comes from we don't even know what we're missing a lot of the time. So describe that for me. Like, what are we missing when we're not really connected to who we really are?
So many ways I could go with this. So when I was in corporate, there's a couple stories that I like to share around this. And one of them is that, corporate Kristin thought that anything was possible. I was always interested in change and evolution. And my boss said to me once, he said, "The sky is the limit for you." And I said to him, "There's a limit." And I just believed that if we could think it, we could create it, right? I used to want to be an Imagineer at Disney. I used to check if they had openings, and they I think shut that division down. But that was always me. Like I have on my website that I'm a possibilitarian. Like I just believe that anything is possible. And so what's interesting to me is that, knowing that version of me, and now having connected to my intuition and being able to connect to this other layer of consciousness, the super conscious, this has expanded my horizons into what's actually possible. So it's interesting to me when we can start to live beyond the mind into these other levels of consciousness, other dimensions. There's so much more out there than these little human minds know.
Yeah.
So we really limit ourselves, and it's not intentional, right? I mean, even like I said, corporate Kristin thought anything was possible. So it's not that I wasn't trying to expand. It's just I didn't have that awareness there. So I think that's the first thing is really having that awareness and understanding where we're tapped in, or even thinking things like, I talk to a lot of moms who think that they're, very regimented and in control of their lives, when in reality they're reacting to everything that's put in front of them, and they think that their ability to put out fires on a regular basis is control. But it's this right, it's this constant reaction, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize, like, I thought I was like a good responder, and you're a good reactor. There's a difference." So that's one. Another thing I would share is that when I graduated with my first coaching certification, my coach's mentor came to our graduation, and he told this story. I asked him the question, how do I maintain courage of these visions, these dreams that I have that seem so much bigger than me? How do I sit and the courage and hold the space for myself to accomplish these things. And so he told this story that I've shared a number of times, and the story is that Superwoman, all she wanted to do was fit in to society. She just wanted to belong. And so every day she had to make the decision, am I going to belong with everyone here in society, or am I going to save the kids on the drowning bus?
Mm-hmm.
And so every day that we choose not to be in our superpower, not to be who we truly are, the world suffers. Someone in the world that we are meant to connect with is suffering because we're choosing to be small, because we're choosing to fit in, to belong in a pack where we don't. To go back, I'm just going to keep going back to that. And at the time I was bawling my eyes out when he shared that story. And now I can share it, and it just is something that I like to share a lot of, because we always have the choice, right, to be small. But I always say, if you feel the calling, if you feel the nudge, if you're listening to this and you're like, yes, I've been holding myself back, then know that someone out there is suffering, waiting for you to step into your gifts and light up the way for them.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing. I feel like it's this little web. As I travel and talk about these things, even, it's like this little web is lighting up around the world. We just make more and more connections, and we all get to be these little lighthouses that either call people in or they don't see it at all. And that's okay. Like, not everybody is called to the journey.
Right. So why do we so often have this hesitation or this fear around discovering who we really are?
I mean, the first thing that comes through is our bigness, right? We're afraid of our own power. What's the Marianne Williamson quote? I don't remember what it is, but it's something to that effect, that we're not afraid of our inadequacies. We're afraid of our power. And I think that what's interesting about that is that we don't know what that is. So it's like we're holding this fear, right? This subconscious fear of how big we are in a world that has told us that we're not worthy, that we're not valuable.
And that being small is safer, often. I mean, we think we get that message a lot in our world today.
And then add in other factors, right? Being a woman, being gay, being a person of color, whatever. Add in additional factors, right? That sometimes make people feel even smaller.
Yeah.
There's a big worthiness wound in the culture that we live in. And so, when we're surrounded by that and in this sea of unworthiness, it's easy to choose that path. I had another mentor, another quick story. I had another mentor that when I was really struggling in corporate, she drew on a nap. We went to Fridays, if those still exist in the world. She drew on a napkin the bell curve from statistics. And she circled the very edge of the curve, and she said, this is where you are. You're an extreme outlier. And then she drew all these arrows pointing into the bell, and she said, your whole life you're going to feel pressure to come back to the norm. And it just resonated with me so much, right? Because that's what we feel. We live in this, the bell is worthiness, right? And so when we live in that, and there's all this pressure that's saying, like, you're not worthy, you're not worthy, you're not worthy, you're not enough. And we're trying to come out and be big in our bigness and our greatness. It's hard to understand the bridge there, right? How do I get from being here? I don't have, most of the time it's, I don't have greatness, or I don't know what I have. But in that unraveling, the more that we come out of the curve, right, and step into the outlier, the more we can actually see the truth. But it takes courage to do that, because of all that pressure, all that energy that we feel to come back to what's normal.
Right.
is always going to outweigh this little bit of energy that we're trying to sustain in walking our path. And so that's why it takes the courage, because it's a disciplined practice. It's not something you just say, oh, I'm over here now.
Oh, if only it were that easy. Yes, so many things in life are like that. It's a journey and a process, and there are layers, and it's complicated and it's hard. But often those really hard journeys are the ones that have the most valuable outcomes. So what does this process look like? Like when you kind of reached that point where you were like, okay, I gotta do something here. You started kind of seeing the need for some major shifts. What were your first steps? Like, what does this process look like when we start on this journey?
Well, I mean, not everyone's going to like this answer, but I think for everyone it's different.
Ah, yes, the true answer that no one likes.
But for me, what that looked like is I was looking to quiet my mind. So that's where I started. I wanted to have space for my mind just constantly thinking. And I knew that I needed a shift because nothing was changing, right? I was just in this sort of hamster wheel of the same patterns happening over and over again. And so I decided I'm going to flow through this meditation practice and see what happens. And so the more that I did that, the more that I meditated, the more space I created between my mind and my body. And I started getting messages. So at first it was just, I wanted peace, right? I didn't expect in a million years that my intuition was going to reveal itself through meditation. I just wanted peace and quiet in my mind. I wanted to be able to sit and rest. I wanted to feel fulfilled, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't able to feel that. And so that was the first piece, was getting quiet. And I did that through meditation. I think there's a lot of practices that you can do with that. And so meditation really started opening up for me my intuitive gifts. So I started hearing messages, and then I started having visions, and I started recognizing that, wait, there's a much bigger piece here that I'm not attuned to at all. And so the visions were really what got me so interested in exploring intuition and honing it more. And so that's the journey that I went on. I would also say before that, the emotional piece is like the emotional unraveling is also very important. So those years that I spent in therapy before that, for the same purpose, right? I was starting to feel anxiety when I was 30, never felt it before. And I needed a way to hone that. I couldn't get in a car anymore without fearing that deer were going to run in front of me. It was debilitating. Yeah. And so I just wanted peace from that. And that became about me just releasing all this emotional baggage that I was carrying. I almost said garbage. Just emotional garbage, which it is, it's all relevant, it's all there, it's there for a reason. And so a big part of the beginning was in that piece too. And I don't want to dismiss that. And I think that that's also scary for people, because they think that if I go into this trauma, if I go into this sadness, if I go into this darkness, if I go into this anger, I'm never going to come out of it because it's so intense.
Yeah.
But the universe never gives us anything we can't handle. And if it's coming out, it's ready to heal. It's ready to actually release. But we think, we get scared and we control it. We push it back down. And that just keeps it trapped. That just keeps us in this masked version of ourselves that's so numbed out from our own emotion that we can't possibly feel what's actually true inside of us, what's underneath all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So those are a couple of the big things I would say.
And I think there's always, I think we tend to have this fear of the unknown. Like if we don't know what it's going to look like or what it's going to what's going to happen, like most of us anyway, have a big resistance to that, like unknown. You said you used the phrase "see what's going to happen" or see what this is going to feel like" or something like that. And I thought when you said that, I was like, that right there is one of the scariest things I think that people can do, is just relinquish the control long enough to get curious and see what's going to happen, because we're so afraid of anything that we can't control. I think a lot of times in every aspect of our lives. So how did you get past that hurdle of like, how do I stop resisting this exploration and start leaning into it, even though it might be somewhat terrifying?
Mm-hmm. Even before you asked, I knew what I needed to say. And the answer is that a guide, so having a guide with me, like a therapist and then a coach, for me was very, very helpful. Just to know that what I was experiencing was normal, right? I had a mentor that every time I would come to her and I was really unraveling my emotional experiences in this coaching program, she would say to me, first and foremost, normalize it. And I love that it's so simple, but like just normalize it. There's nothing wrong with you because you're feeling this way, right? The other thing she would say to me, which drove me nuts for a period of time, was, can you love the part of you who is angry at your mother right now, or whatever it was?
Mm-hmm.
And I used to get so frustrated and say, if I can love the part of me one more time, I might scream. Because in the beginning, it was like, no, I can't love that part of me. I hate that part of me. And this is where it's powerful to have somebody say to you that this is normal, and then just keep encouraging you to love and to have compassion for that part of you.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way that I describe it to people is, and I describe this with a lot of things when I went on the therapy journey, right? Therapy is about approaching this fork in the road. Your whole life you've been going left. When you start in therapy, you're like starting to choose right? This left path is very ingrained. You know it. You could walk with your eyes closed, sleepwalk through it. This path on the right side is overgrown. And you're not sure what's going to come out on the other side or where you're going to end up. Right? But the more you walk it, the more ingrained it becomes, right? Same thing with choosing ego, which we tend to choose left path, versus intuition on the right. It's the same process. And no matter what that is, I always tell people that, like, the longer you choose right, the more you ingrain that path. If you just walk that 51% of the time, you'll start to feel some relief. But when you're on the way there, like just walking in the beginning, first time, second time, third time, 40th time, it still feels hard. Yeah. It still feels like, why the fuck am I still here?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I still feeling like this? But you just need that 51, just a little over the hump, start feeling some relief.
Yeah.
And that's when you can actually feel, can I love the part of you, right? That's when the love grows bigger than the hurt.
Mm.
That's why you feel the relief, because you've grown this love inside of you, the self-love, the unconditional love within you, the compassion, big enough to overpower the hurt. That's when you can really start to witness now, right? Now I can actually step out of the hurt and see and witness myself in a way that I wasn't able to before. And like, and then you become curious, right? These are the things that your coaches will tell you from the beginning. That can be very frustrating, but if you don't have somebody there reminding you over and over again, this is okay. Like, this is normal. Like, this is a totally normal part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
it can be harder. I'm not saying you need someone to guide you, but I'm saying that it's very helpful to
Yeah.
have that. Only you know what you need, and at the end of the day, if you're hitting your head against the wall over and over again, wondering why am I repeating the same pattern, maybe you should invite in some perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, because we can often see those things in someone else much easier than we can see them in ourselves, for sure. So, what would you say to someone who has kind of started on this journey and they're finding that there's a discomfort now because they are doing some work. They are starting to kind of connect with their intuition and show up differently in the world. And all of a sudden, the people around them are like, hey, wait a second. Like, there's this sense of like, maybe you're outgrowing the people around you or you're changing in a way that makes the people around you uncomfortable. Like, how do you navigate that?
So you're coming out of the norm curve.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
Out of that
people are
bell
like,
curve that you were talking about.
yeah, and people are like, wait a minute, like you're stepping outside the lines. What do you do?
Yeah,
What are you
you're not
doing?
allowed to do that.
No. And the biggest thing is I went through this as well. When I started my therapy journey, my whole family actually told me that they don't know how to have conversations with me anymore because I'm too deep. Because I had gone into that emotional realm, because I had ripped the Band-Aid off and said, I'm not carrying this anymore. And I want to understand me more. And the more that we understand ourselves and go on that journey, the more we understand and have compassion for people around us too, because you can start to see why people do things like somebody talking over somebody, for example, is very frustrating. But we can have compassion for maybe this person wasn't heard as a child, and thinks that they need to speak louder or over people in order to be heard, right? It's not malicious. It's just, part of their wounding.
Right.
And so I lost your question.
Oh, it was about dealing with that discomfort of
Oh, yes.
outgrowing people and outgrowing situations that we're still in.
Yes. So along the way, when we choose to grow, the people around us are going to become uncomfortable with who we're becoming because they don't understand it. It's not about us, it's about them.
Mm-hmm.
Their response, right? One of my favorite quotes, your reaction to me is a reflection of you. My response to you is an awareness of me.
Yes.
One of my favorites. And so always reminding that, and that's not easy, by the way.
No, it's
So
not.
when people start quote unquote rejecting you, we take it personally. We feel it's personal, right? And it's truly, truly, truly more about them and their own discomfort, and that the people who are meant to be with you will stay with you along the way. And the other piece is that in the beginning, at least for me, I wanted everyone to understand why I was on the journey that I was on, why I was doing what I was doing. I wanted everyone to understand. Like, I needed my parents to understand. And at the end of the day, they still don't understand.
Yeah.
Because they don't choose to. That's not part of their journey, right? They're part of the reason that inspired me to go on my journey. And that's beautiful, right? And so maybe that's just where their purpose lies as it relates to me. And so this is also part of it, right? It's like, where do I need understanding from or compassion from? Can I give that to myself? And can I release the expectation of those around me to understand what I'm going through, and trust that if they can't handle this new energy, this releasing of the old me and becoming of who I am, then they're not for me.
Right.
And I'm always careful about this, because like I have little things around like respect and hierarchy and authority kind of stuff. So like when we talk about evolution, it's not so much that like well, I've outgrown our friendship and you're not a good enough friend for me anymore. It's not like that. It's that our energies are no longer in alignment.
Yeah.
Because I've chosen to walk this path over here.
Right.
And you're still over here. And they're not close enough for me to feel in resonance with you anymore. It's not, right? It's just a different path. It's not one is better than the other, because everyone has their own timing. And this has been a huge part of my journey, because I was always trying to hustle to get somewhere, right? When am I going to be there? When am I going to get there? When am I going to get on the other side of this? Just constantly. And my one coach used to say to me, progress is not your business. Another thing that was super frustrating to me, because I was just like, when is this going to be over? Like, why is this hard? Right. And go back to the 51% thing. That's all it is. And that's a great book for people to read if you're book readers, is The Slight Edge, because it talks about this sort of concept where, most people sort of oscillate in this space of survive, like, I'm going to do just what I need to do to survive. And then I'm just going to like stop. And then I coast down to this, oh my gosh, I need to do something. And then I go up to like, okay, bring myself back up into this space of survival. Now, if you just keep doing the thing that you did to get up there, you kept going, then you would end up in the 1, the 3, the 5% of the population that actually is thriving and are billionaires in the world, because they just kept doing the thing that got them there. But most people will choose this annoying oscillation between like, I'm freaking out. What do I need to do? And then they get themselves out of this, like into a space of neutrality, and then they come back, and it's just the human way. There's nothing wrong with you if that's what's happening to you. It's literally what most humans do.
Yeah.
But that's why I always say, like, if you feel that, if that light is lit up inside of you, like when you listen to Alyssa's podcast and she's talking about things, or her guests are talking about things that are just like sparking things inside of you, to me, that's a soul to soul connection. That's an activation.
Yeah.
You can't turn it off. You can resist it. The more you resist it, the more you'll suffer.
Right. Right. Yeah, I can so relate to that. Like, it's a journey, not a destination concept. I'm very goal oriented. And so I'm like, how much more of this work am I going to have to do until I'm done? I think like coming to the realization that there really is no done. Like it's a lifelong journey, and I'm always going to be on it. It's going to change over time. One of the things that one of my coaches said to me is it's like this journey where the scenery will sometimes change and the climate will sometimes change, and there's different stages or phases, or however you want to put that. Some days it feels like you're trekking through the desert, and other days it feels like you're walking on the beach, but it's all a journey, and there is no end point. There is no destination. And when we can let go of that, I think that helps take some of at least for me, that took some of the struggle out of it, to just focus on, what do I need today? What do I need from myself today? What do I need to work on today? What is, like, it also brought me back from this focus on like, where am I headed? What am I doing? Always being focused on the future to learning to just be in today and to be in the moment and be aware of what's happening inside of me and around me, today in this moment. But I think that's cultural as well. Like, I know that there are some cultures in the world today that are not so goal oriented and focused. And so we have all these conditionings depending on how we were raised and where we were raised, and all that really plays into a lot of what we're talking about today. Okay, so as we kind of wrap this up, I would love for you to kind of describe for us a little bit of what does it look like for you today to be on this journey and have done a lot of this work over the past years? How do you show up differently? How is your life different now versus what it would look like if you had continued to resist learning some of these things?
The answer is nuanced. So what I would say the biggest thing is that before I was seeking belonging and trying to figure out who I was, now I know who I am. The nuance to that is that I am is always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say to the destination piece that when the work is done, I'll be dead. When my work is done in this life, I'll be dead. So knowing that, right, it does relieve some of that pressure to like hurry up and get somewhere, right? But I think the biggest thing is in this knowingness, this confidence, this tenacious spirit of like, I know who I am, I know what I believe in, and I'm very, very excited to be in my purpose, to be aligned with that, and to know that it's always evolving. And to be able to help other people do that is such a gift.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a gift because I know what it felt like to be lost, to be hustling for happiness, to, not have that fulfillment that I so deeply wanted. And so if I hadn't gone on this journey, I think I would be continuing the pattern of finding a new thing to do every 2 years in my career and hitting a wall with this isn't it. What is it? This isn't it. What is it? And this living in this surface level space of, even the relationships that I was in or had were still very, very on the surface. They weren't in the depths that I am now. And that's what's really exciting to me is to have these deep conversations. I don't know how to talk about the weather and sports and things like I don't know how to talk about that stuff. I'm a very deep conversation person that's very fulfilling to me, and also to feel connected to people in a way that I've never felt before, or to feel connected to nature in a way that I've never felt before, to really understand my beliefs and what I'd like to see in the world and be able to do things that support that, as opposed to being in a space where I'm being told how to act, what's acceptable as a feminine leader, what's not acceptable.
Yeah.
So it's really for me about having found that freedom. And I'm a Sagittarius, so that matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's been very freeing. And I don't, the nonconformity piece, right? It's not about I'm going to walk into a room and rebel for the sake of rebelling, but it's because I can stand in a truth that I know that's mine with conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And it sparks curiosity in people, and that excites me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, so tell people who are listening, who this conversation has sparked something for and they'd like to connect with you, how they can do that, what it is that you do, and who you work with and that sort of thing.
Thank you for that. So my website is kqunplugged.co. You can find really everything there. I have a podcast called Sacred Rebel. I have a YouTube channel, Instagram, Rewilding KQ. The work that I do, as I said, is really about nonconformity, expression, and purpose. And I use tools like intuition, human design, and masculine, feminine energetics to really hone the rewilding process. And so if any of those things spark your fancy, I would love to talk more.
All right. Well, we'll put all of your links in the show notes or in the description on YouTube. If people want to connect with you, that's where they look. Thank you, Kristin, so much for taking the time to be here and have this conversation with us. I love that this is the end of season 3 and we're leaving people on this note that hopefully has really sparked some curiosity about what is possible and what things could look like if they were willing or are willing to jump out of that box that we put ourselves in just a little bit. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Alyssa.
All right. Thank you so much to everyone who's listening. I hope you will continue to join us when season 4 starts in the fall. And for season 3, this is a wrap of Equilibrium Echoes. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. If you would like to learn more about the podcast, visit www.coachingwithalyssa.com/podcast. And while you're there, book your free consultation and download the preview of my new book, Marriage is Hard and Other Lies I Believed. I'll see you in the next episode.